Here's a question that should bother you. How does a project report green every single week for 6 months and then get canceled in one meeting? It happens all the time, and nobody lied on a single one of those reports. The answer to that puzzle is the whole reason this task exists. There's one test that tells you whether a status report is worth the paper it's printed on. I'll hand it to you at the end.
And it pays off exactly what we built last time. Welcome back to the process domain, 41% of your exam, the technical heart of the PMP. We're still on task 9, evaluate project status. Last episode was the math half, earned value, the numbers that tell you the truth. Today is the paperwork half, the reports and artifacts that carry those numbers to the people who actually decide.
So start with the machine underneath every report because the exam tests these stages by name. Status doesn't arrive as a report. It arrives as raw data first. Percent complete, hours logged, dollars spent, defects found, dates hit and missed. That's work performance data, and it's just facts. It doesn't mean anything yet. Then you do something to it. You compare it against the baseline, the plan you promised. Now the data becomes information. Not we've spent $50,000, but we've spent $50,000 and earned $40, so we're over. That comparison is the whole move. Information is data with a plan behind it.
Then, and only then, does it become a report.
Exactly. The report is the artifact, the physical or electronic thing you hand someone so they can make a decision or raise a flag. Data, then information, then report. The exam wants you to know those are 3 different things produced at 3 different stages, flowing in that one direction. Skip the middle and you're just forwarding a spreadsheet.
Make it concrete. Percent complete is data, a raw 30%. On its own, it's meaningless. 30% could be a triumph or a disaster. The information is 30% done when the plan said 50. Now it means something, we're behind. And the report is the one line that puts that in front of the person who can add budget or cut scope. Same fact, 3 altitudes.
Which is where the green report comes from. It's data dressed up as a decision.
That's the trap in one line. Picture a scoreboard hanging over an arena. Everyone in the building sees the same number at the same time, and nobody has to walk over and ask. That is what a good status report is, one shared, current truth that a passerby reads at a glance. And a report has exactly one job: to change what somebody does next. If the sponsor reads your report and does nothing different, and could have done nothing different, then the report wasn't communication, it was decoration. That's the standard the exam holds you to, and it's higher than most working managers actually meet.
And you write it for a reader, not for a file. Before you type a word, name who reads it and what decision they own. A report to a sponsor and a report to your team about the exact same week are different documents. If you don't know who's reading, you can't know what to leave out, and leaving things out is most of the job. And here's where experience actively hurts you. Run the math on what a seasoned manager instinctively reports. They report activity. We closed 19 tickets, we ran 12 interviews, the team worked hard. All true, all busy, and all useless, because none of it is measured against what you promised. Activity is not status.
Status is one question. Are we where the plan said we'd be?
That's the reflex to build. A working PM reports how much they did. The exam wants you to report where you are against the baseline, and what that means for the finish. Both things are true. The team worked hard and the project is behind, and only one of them belongs in a status report. And there's a subtler trap underneath the old one. Even managers who report status instead of activity often report against the latest plan, the one they quietly slid last month, instead of the baseline they originally promised. That's how a project can be red against its real commitment and green against the plan it keeps rewriting. Report against the baseline, the one you signed, or the color means nothing.
And that's the answer to the puzzle from the top. That green then canceled project. Every weekly report was true. Tasks closed, hours logged, milestones checked, all green. What no report ever showed was whether any of it was worth what it cost, or whether it still matched what the sponsor actually needed. The reports measured motion, nobody measured value. So the day someone finally asked the value question, the whole thing collapsed in one afternoon, and not a single report had lied.
If you want to drill this the way the exam actually asks it, there are free practice questions and free flashcards waiting at certs.professorerica.com. The reporting questions look easy and quietly aren't. Go take them after this.
So here's the promise for the next 20-odd minutes. You'll leave knowing what to report, which artifact to reach for, who to send it to, how often, and how to tell the truth in a status report even when the truth is read. Fenrir, before we take it to the desk, plant the question people need to sit with.
Here it is, your last status report. If it had told the whole truth, would anyone reading it have been surprised in a later meeting? Hold that, because the honest answer is usually yes, and that yes is the entire problem. Let me pause for just a second, because this genuinely helps. If you are getting value here, hit that like button, then subscribe and ring the bell. It costs you nothing, and it is the single biggest thing that keeps these videos coming. To stress test this, we've pulled in Professor Novak at the desk. She's here to help us pressure test the answers. Novak, welcome.
Glad to be here. I'll push on anything that sounds tidier than a real project ever is.
Good, because I'll push first. Data, information, report. Honestly, that sounds like busy work. If I've got the numbers, why not send everyone all of them and let them sort it out? That's real.
That's not transparency, it's abdication with a spreadsheet attached. Run the math on it. You send the sponsor 40 rows of task detail. One red line in there says the launch date is at risk. What are the odds a busy executive finds that one line out of 40, low? You had the signal, you buried it in noise, and now you get to say you told them. You didn't. Transparency isn't what you sent, it's what they understood.
And that lands right on a verbatim exam skill. The status task doesn't say create a report. It says identify and tailor needed artifacts. Tailor. Different readers need different artifacts built from the very same data.
And the task doesn't stop at making the artifact, either. The same task says help ensure artifacts are created, reviewed, updated, and documented, and that they're accessible, which means a perfect report locked on your laptop, or last updated 3 sprints ago, still fails. The status has to be current, and it has to be reachable by the people who need it. An artifact nobody can find is the same as no artifact. So walk the 3 readers, because the exam loves testing who gets what. The sponsor is the classic one. They don't want the task list. They want 3 things. The exceptions, what's off plan, the forecast, where does this land, and the one decision you need from them today. Everything else is noise to a sponsor.
And you can picture that sponsor page exactly. One rag headline at the top, red, amber, or green. The forecast finish date and final cost underneath. The top 2 or 3 risks. And at the bottom, the single decision you need with your recommendation sitting right next to it. 1 page. A sponsor reads it in the elevator and knows whether to worry.
The team is the opposite reader. They live in the detail, so they want the detail. The burndown, the task board, who's blocked on what today. Give a sponsor that and they drown. Give a team the sponsor's 1-page summary and they can't act on it. Same underlying data, 2 completely different artifacts.
And the third reader is the one people forget until an audit. Governance. The steering committee, the PMO, a regulator. They want compliance and a trail, proof the decisions were made properly and recorded. We covered the communication plan itself back in the people domain. This is the artifact that plan produces.
And it's not just what's in the artifact, it's how it reaches them. A report you email is a push, and once it's sent, it's out of your hands whether they read it. A live dashboard they check when they want is a pull. And the status meeting is interactive, back and forth. We went deep on that in the communication episode. The point for status is, you tailor the channel to, not just the page.
So the move is one status flowing one direction. Data becomes information, information becomes a report, and the report only counts when it drives a decision.
Read that card left to right and you can see where reports fall apart. Most teams jump straight from data to report. They skip the middle step, the reading against the baseline, and they never check the last one, the decision. A report that produces no decision is just a status meeting that could have been a scoreboard nobody looks at.
And that middle step is where a project can quietly go off the...
Sorry, I'm going to do the thing I do on my walks and think this one out loud. The middle step, turning data into information, that's literally the earned value from last episode, isn't it? Reading against the plan is the comparison.
It is. Earned value is the engine, and the report is the proof.
The dashboard. It's the dashboard bolted on the engine.
Close, but I'd say gauge, not dashboard. And the difference is coming up in the next scene. A dashboard is many gauges at once. Hold that thought.
Fair. Quick check for everyone at home first. How many stages does raw work performance pass through before it's a report a sponsor can act on? Novak, don't answer. Let them guess. Erica, take the swing.
I'll go with the honest first instinct. 2. Data, then the report.
That's the exact instinct the exam punishes. It's 3. Data, information, report. The missing middle one, the analysis against the plan, is the whole reason a report means anything. Drop it, and you've mailed a spreadsheet and called it status. The exam writes wrong answers that skip straight from data to report on purpose.
And you can feel the cost of getting it wrong. A room full of people paid $100+ an hour each, sitting through a status meeting where the report only listed activity. Nobody could decide anything, so they scheduled another meeting to decide. That's the single most expensive way ever invented to not communicate.
See, the premise of most status meetings is wrong. They exist to inform. They should exist to decide.
And that's the most expensive artifact you own, a meeting that only informs. If the report already delivered the status, the meeting is for the one decision the report asked for. Read, then decide. Not read it to them out loud and call that a review. That's the whole reframe. So the takeaway from this desk: status is manufactured in 3 stages, and you tailor the final artifact to the reader. Sponsor gets exceptions and a forecast and one decision. Team gets the working detail. Governance gets the trail. Same truth, 3 shapes.
Which raises the obvious next question. What do those artifacts actually look like, and how do you pick the right one? So let's name the artifacts, because the exam expects you to know which tool carries which message. Start with the 2 that get confused constantly, the dashboard and the information radiator.
A dashboard is the many gauges thing I promised. It borrows the word straight from a cockpit. Look at a glass cockpit and you see it. A whole panel of critical readings laid out so a pilot takes in the state of the entire aircraft in one scan. A project dashboard does the same job. Schedule, cost, risk, quality, all on one screen, so a reader gets health in a single glance instead of reading 10 separate reports.
And the trap with a dashboard is the opposite of the sponsors. It's too much. A dashboard with 50 gauges isn't a dashboard, it's wallpaper. Nobody reads it. The skill is picking the vital few, the handful of measures that actually predict health, and leaving everything else in the detail report.
And there's a name for the 2 kinds you put on it. Lagging indicators tell you what already happened: costs spent, tasks done, defects found. Leading indicators hint at what's coming: the defect trend, the velocity, the risk exposure. A dashboard that's all lagging is a rearview mirror. Put a couple of leading ones on it and the reader sees the wall before the project hits it.
And the information radiator is a specific, tested idea with an actual origin. Alistair Cockburn coined the term, and his definition is lovely. A display you put where passers-by can see it, so the information simply hits them as they pass, and they never have to ask a question. A task board on the wall. A burn-down taped by the door. Always current, 0 effort to read.
So a dashboard you go and look at. A radiator looks at you.
That's a genuinely good way to hold it. Both push the same idea: make status effortless to see, so it stops being something you chase in a meeting and becomes something that's just there.
One hard caution on the radiator though. It only works if it's current. A board everyone trusts that's 3 days stale is worse than no board at all, because people act on a number that stopped being true. A radiator is a promise. If you can't keep it fresh, take it down. Then there's the pair the exam loves to swap on you, burn down and burn up. A burn down chart tracks the work remaining. It starts high and slopes down towards zero as you finish things. It answers one question: how much is left? Clean, motivating, everybody's seen one.
And a burn-up is just the same chart flipped upside down. Work done instead of work left. Same information.
Not the same information. That's the trap. A burn-up has a second line, a burn-down doesn't. It draws total scope as its own line across the top. So a burn-up shows you two things at once: work completed climbing and the finish line itself. Here's why the exam cares. If someone quietly adds scope, a burn-down just looks like the team slowed down. The burn-up shows the scope line jump up. A burn-up exposes scope creep. A burn-down hides it.
Put them side by side. Burn-down plots the work remaining and slopes towards zero, but it hides scope creep. Burn-up plots the work completed against a separate scope line, so it makes scope creep visible.
Okay, that one lands. It bugs me that I liked the flipped chart line and it was wrong. Continue.
Make it concrete for a second. A sprint of 40 points. The burn-down starts at 40 and should walk down to zero by Friday. Now the client sneaks in 10 more points mid-week. On the burn-down, the line just goes flat and the team looks lazy. On the burn-up, the scope line visibly steps up from 40 to 50, and everyone can see the extra work is scope, not slacking. That one detail is the whole reason a burn-up exists. And the last artifact is one everyone's already met, whether they know the acronym or not. RAG status. Red, amber, green.
It's the most compressed report there is. Green, on track. Keep going. Amber, there are issues, but they're manageable. Watch it and mitigate. Red, serious trouble. Someone needs to act now. One color, and a busy reader knows in a quarter of a second whether to relax or lean in.
And it's a traffic light on purpose. The whole value is that one glance tells you exactly what to do. Green, drive. Amber, prepare to stop. Red, stop and deal with it. The color isn't decoration, it's an instruction.
Here's the catch the exam hides in RAG though. Who decides it's amber and not green? On its own, a color is just a mood. The professional move is to tie the color to a number. Remember the indices from last episode? You set the rule up front. Cost index above 0.95 is green, between 0.9 and 0.95 is amber, below that is red. Now nobody argues, the metric picks the color.
And that's what turns RAG from a feeling into a report. An objective threshold set before the project starts, so a red is a fact, not an accusation. It also kills the watermelon before it can grow, because you can't quietly call a red project green when the number is the one holding the marker.
Which is exactly why it's so easy to abuse. But before the abuse, prove this is the real skill. Read me the actual line from PMI. Not your paraphrase, the words.
Fair demand. Here's the status task, straight from the exam content outline.
Identify and tailor needed artifacts. Communicate project status. That's the reporting half of task 9, in PMI's own words. Last episode was develop and measure the metrics. This episode is choose the artifact and communicate it. Same task, 2 verbs, and the exam tests both.
So carry 3 names out of this scene. A dashboard puts many metrics on one glance. An information radiator makes status effortless to see, always. And your charts burn down for work left, burn up when scope can move, RAG when a reader needs the answer in one color. Pick the artifact that fits the reader, exactly like PMI said.
And now the abuse, because the easiest artifact to fake is the one color one. So RAG is one color that tells you what to do, which means the failure mode is obvious. You can just pick the color you wish were true. Professor Novak's back to help us push on the hard part, the honesty part. Novak, there's even a name for this lie, isn't there?
There is, and it's perfect. It's called a watermelon. Green on the outside, red all the way through the middle. The report says green, and if you cut into the actual project, it's in trouble. It's the single most common reporting pathology there is, and the exam tests whether you'll be the person who serves one.
And honestly, the instinct behind it isn't even evil. Keep it green, protect the team, don't invite a swarm of executives. A red status feels like admitting you failed, so people round up. Amber becomes green. Green with concerns becomes green. Run that a few weeks and you've grown a watermelon, and nobody ever meant to lie.
You're right about the instinct, it's protective, not malicious. But flip it, because that's the exam's whole point. Who does keeping it green actually protect?
Nobody. It protects nobody, because
Because the truth arrives anyway, it just arrives late and expensive. A green that hides a red always gets cut open eventually, usually in the worst meeting possible, in front of the most people. An honest amber raised in week 3 gets you help while the fix is cheap. A surprise red in week 9 gets you blame while it's ruinous. You are not scored on the color. You are scored on whether the reader was ever surprised.
Wait. Back up to that one word. Surprised. That's the test I promised at the top?
That's the test. No surprises. A status report has done its job when nobody ever learned something bad in a meeting that the report should have told them first. That's the whole standard, and it's how you tell a real report from decoration. Read your last one and ask, would this have surprised anyone? If yes, it failed, no matter what color it was.
And the graveyard of this mistake has a famous headstone.
Columbia, the Space Shuttle, 2003. Lost on re-entry, all 7 crew, and here's the part that belongs in a reporting episode. The accident board found that NASA's own culture, how risk got talked about and how concerns got softened as they moved up the reports, was as much to blame as the foam that hit the wing. The bad news kept getting rounded toward green on the way up. Engineers below knew. The decision makers above heard managed.
It's the most serious reminder there is that a status report is not paperwork. It's the nervous system of a project. When it lies, even gently, even kindly, the people who could act never get the signal in time.
So how does an honest report actually read on the page? Show me.
Take the exact project from last episode and put it in one honest summary line. Budget was $100,000. At the halfway mark, we'd spent $50,000 but only earned $40,000. The forecast says we finish at $125,000, $25,000 over. So the status is red, and the report says red out loud at week 5 while we can still do something. That's a report that does its job.
And notice the report carries the number, but the number came from the metrics half. This is why the 2 episodes are one task. Compute the truth, then communicate the truth. Neither half is optional.
2 more decisions, and you've got the whole task. First, cadence. How often do you report? And the answer is, it depends on the reader and the risk.
Which is a non-answer unless you make it concrete.
Fair, so concrete. The team that lives in the work gets a daily glance, a stand-up at the board. The sponsor gets a weekly or a monthly rhythm because they steer, they don't drive, and a steering committee often reports by milestone, at the gates. Faster when the project is volatile or in trouble, slower when it's steady. You tailor the frequency the same way you tailor the artifact. And second, the one that gets treated as gospel. Every serious project deserves a full reporting dashboard tool, and anything less is amateur.
Hold on, I'll push back on that, hard. A heavyweight dashboard earns its place on a big, governed, multi-team program where lots of stakeholders need the same current picture. On a 5-person team, a whiteboard by the door that anyone can read beats a licensed tool nobody logs into. The best information radiator I've ever seen was a hand-drawn chart on a wall. Match the weight of the artifact to the project.
And that's exactly the answer the exam wants, so I'll concede it happily. It's the same judgment as running full earned value versus a simple burn down. The tailored answer wins, never the most expensive one. Worshipping the tool is its own wrong answer.
Okay, let's drill it. Fast answers. A sponsor asks for a status report. What do you lead with?
The exceptions, the forecast, and the one decision you need. Not the task list.
A chart shows work completed rising, with a separate line for total scope. Which chart, and what can it catch?
A burn up. And it catches scope creep because the scope line moves where a burn down would just look slow.
Last one. Your project slipped this week. Your instinct is to report amber and quietly fix it before anyone notices. Right or wrong?
Wrong, if quietly is the operative word. Report it straight, in plain words, so nobody's surprised later. It's the kind of line a well-worn philosophy paperback would put in one honest sentence. Amber you can defend. A watermelon you can't. Surface it early, while the fix is still cheap.
That's the reflex the whole episode was for. The honest report isn't the one that looks best. It's the one that surprises nobody.
Professor Novak, that was exactly the pressure this topic needed. Thank you.
Glad to help. Carry one line into the exam. A report exists to change a decision and to make sure no one is ever surprised. So choose the artifact for the reader and tell the truth early.
2 ideas do the heavy lifting, so hold them. First, status is manufactured in 3 stages. Data becomes information when you read it against the plan, information becomes a report when you shape it for a reader, and a report only counts if it changes a decision. Second, the honesty rule. No surprises, amber early beats red late, and never serve a watermelon. Choose the artifact for the reader, report against the baseline, and tell the truth while it's still cheap.
And next time we close it out. Task 10, Project Closure. How you finish a project so the value actually sticks. The approvals, the transition, and the lessons that make the next one better.
If this made status reporting finally make sense, subscribe. It genuinely helps us keep making these. And the free practice questions and flashcards are waiting at certs.professorerica.com. Go earn the pass.
One question before you go. On your last project, was there ever a status everyone privately knew was really red, but the report stayed green? What happened when it finally got cut open? Tell us in the comments.
Data, information, report, decision, and above all, no surprises. That's how you report status the PMI way. See you in the next one.